These next 3 messages, this is not going to be easy emotionally. This is not going to be easy. And I hope the one point you get from this whole series is this: you are an emotional person, created that way. And those emotions need to be given to God, whether it be doubt, whether it be anger, whether it be depression, whether it be suicidal. Whatever emotion you have, you need to give that to God. You have to. What I'm afraid of in Christianity is that we bottle these things up so we look good on the outside. But if you bottle up your emotional response to life, the anger you have because your dad left you when you were young, or the doubts you have because somebody close to you died, or whatever it is, whatever the emotional response is, whatever the traumatic experience is, if you bottle that up inside, it will breed in you only bitterness. And you will feel yourself moving away from God and probably find yourself in unbelief in a couple of years. And so I'm going to push you and force you like a coach coaching linebackers, right? I'm going to get in your face and tell you that you have to, for the sake of your soul and your salvation, for your Christianity to thrive, you have to give your emotions to God. You have to. And the emotion we're going to talk about tonight, the kind of response to the traumatic things of life, is doubt. That's the first one we're talking about, is doubt. The moment, the God, I don't understand moment. Right? If you haven't had one of these, you will have one of these. It'll happen. I just feel like it's guaranteed. I'm sure there's somebody on the planet who's walked through the Christian life, said, I'm ready to follow Jesus, and they've walked through life and it's been just roses. There's probably that one person. Maybe, theoretically, he's out there. So maybe I can't say everybody, but I will say with an almost guarantee that you will find yourself in a moment where you say a phrase like, God, I don't understand. God, I don't understand. And it could be professional. It could be your job. It could be at your workplace. And you say, God, I don't understand why I'm trying to do things your way. I'm trying to live for you, and I never get the promotion. I keep getting overlooked. Or God, I don't understand why I lost my job. God, I don't understand. I thought you were the provider. I thought you were a father who loves me and cares for me, and now I have no job. Or maybe it's more personal. Maybe it's more of like a relationship, and you ask yourself, God, I don't understand. I'm trying to live your way. I'm trying to be pure, and I just keep dating stupid guys, and they just keep breaking my heart, and they just keep fooling around, and I just feel like damaged goods. That's what I feel like. And I feel like I can't trust anybody. I feel like I can't step into a new relationship, and God, I just don't understand. Or maybe it's not about you being good and bad things happen to you. Maybe it's you. You just continually have a life of failure spiritually. You're just habitually caught in this rut of sin. And you're like, God, I don't understand. I pray, God, lead me not to temptation, but deliver me from the evil one. God, don't let me be defeated by temptation. But I keep going to the clubs, and I keep hooking up, and I keep doing the drugs, and I can't handle life. This is the pattern that I was given by my parents, and it's the pattern that I started, and I can't break it. God, I don't understand why you don't deliver me. God, I don't understand why you made me this way. Or maybe it's painful, right? Maybe it's the pain of death, right? You felt that sting of death in your family life, right? You've lost somebody. And you stare at that coffin, you stare at that lifeless body. The body that used to be warm, maybe the body that used to give you an embrace, a hug, the body that used to be there at Christmas and Thanksgiving, the body that used to be there at birthdays, the bodies that loved you, that looked into your eyes and you felt love, and now you're looking at just a shell of a person, and you stare into that coffin, you look and you say, God, I don't understand, why'd you do this? Why now? Why did you take my daughter, my dad before I became an adult? Right, we all get these, man. These God, I don't understand moments where doubt just rushes into us and cripples us. And if you've had it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Doubt can be one of the most paralyzing things you ever experience in your life. More than seeing like a semi coming at you on the freeway. Doubt just rushes in and you can't shake it. A car accident happens and the carnage is there, but usually the ramifications are done after a while. But doubt can sit with you for a lifetime. Never understanding, never getting a sense of relief. I'll tell you personally, as a Christian at the age of 25, right? I've been a Christian for a while. I surrendered to the ministry, surrendered to the idea of being a pastor, and I had my biggest God, I don't understand moments. And I think I've had many of them in my life. I think my journey really with Jesus started with a God, I don't understand moment. And I think that's true even if you're not a Christian here. You probably have had the same idea. Or maybe that's why you don't believe in God, is because you've said, God, I don't understand, so therefore you just can't be real. Because life is chaos. It's not about caring. And I don't feel like you love me. Right? But I know the biggest one for me was when I was a follower of Jesus. The biggest God I understand moment was when I was following Jesus. I was in Louisville, Kentucky. And I was preparing in school. I was learning. I was doing a bunch of stuff and just trying to be a pastor. And if you want to be a pastor, you got to go through a lot of schooling. It's actually surprising, because most of us pastors are dumb. Maybe that's why we need so much schooling, right? But you go through all this schooling. And I remember about halfway through there, life just really started to be just tumultuous, man. And you know, you've heard the phrase before, like when it rains, it pours. Man, I had that in my life. I mean, when it was just raining and pouring, it was a monsoon. It was awful. You know, I was about 2,000 miles away from my wife's family and my family. And when I was in Louisville, Kentucky, my grandpa died on my dad's side, and then my grandma died on my mom's side, which was really significant for me because these were the people who really raised me. Because my grandparents had a really big impact on my life as a kid, so that was really difficult for me to deal with. And as a grad student going through seminary, I couldn't afford to go out to funerals. So, you know, I had to choose, which was awful. I mean, just imagine yourself in that situation. You can't go to both, right? And as I'm sitting there deciding those things, then my stepdad gets cancer and dies within a couple months. Just this aggressive cancer, body swelling, it's awful. And that was a really weird experience because my stepdad and I had a really awful relationship, like most stepdads probably have with their stepchildren. But we did not have a good relationship, and so I felt bad that I didn't feel bad, or as bad as I thought I should. So I remember going through that, and really missing my grandparents, and then going through the death of my stepfather, and having these mixed emotions, right? And that's awful, but I'm just being honest with you, just being real with you. And so I was sad, but I was sad that I wasn't as sad as I thought I should be. And so 3 deaths in our family, and in my family, and that was really hard. And then my wife and I get pregnant, which is super awesome. We felt like this is great. This is just so good. Finally there's life, you know. In the Crandell name, there's life. But that life was soon taken away. Right? My wife had a miscarriage. And I'm telling you right now, before you as your pastor, I did not pass that test. I didn't. Not with flying colors. I mean, I'm still a Christian. I still believe. But you talk about doubt paralyzing you. I mean, I was paralyzed. And I remember the moment that I felt the most God, I don't understand moment. My wife and I, it was awful the way everything happened. We basically, I don't want to go through all of it because it's a tough situation for me to even walk through just in a message, to walk through emotionally. But I'll tell you what happened is we had to go to the doctor, and they sent us back, and then we're supposed to come back for a procedure because she was so far along, so she couldn't just pass the miscarriage. Which is that's just weird, you know. You kind of want this thing to just get over with. Right, and so I go to a buddy's house before we go back to the hospital, and I'm wrecked, dude. I am wrecked. I'm so just, I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm upset, and I'm doubtful if God even loves me. But the real thing, this is the real thing that really kind of, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. The right hook of doubt that really set in was when we went back to the hospital. they're kind of setting up everything for my wife to go out. They're putting her in a gown and everything. And I remember I can't go in with my wife for the procedure. I can't go in there, which of course I fought. I was like, no, I need to be in there. My wife calmed me down. She says, no, you can't be in there. They can't allow you to be in there. And my wife is an awesome, wonderful, godly person. If you know her, she's the better half by far. Yeah, thank you. And she stared at me. And she says, it's okay. And they wheel her off in this like bed, this little gurney thing. And they take her past these double doors. And I thought to myself, it's not okay. This is not okay. This is not okay with me. And all I could think in my mind with God was, how dare you? Right? You give this pain to me. I'm fine with that. I've endured some crappy stuff in my childhood. Right? I can deal with that pain. I can deal with that. You let me put that on my shoulders. They might not be physically broad, but I feel like emotionally I could handle the trauma. But the moment you put it on that woman, that's when we have problems. And I remember looking into her eyes and watching her go away, and I couldn't do anything. I can't take that away from her. I can't take that pain away from her. Right? I can't jump in front of that bullet. I can't fight off that intruder. This pain is a pain that she would have to bear, and I could not. And I remember saying, God, I just don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand why you would do this. I don't understand why you would move us so far away from her family. God, I don't understand why you have to wheel her off into this room where I can't be there to hold her hand. God, I am not okay with this, and I do not understand. Doubt is the killer of faith. It's the killer of faith. But you have to give that doubt to God. You have to. You have to. When those moments come upon you, and they will, you have to give that to God. Let me just show you. Look, there's a couple passages here. You'll see them right there in your outline. I just want to show you kind of the posture of the people who write the Bible, these people who love Jesus, who love God. Just listen to some of their questions that they have. Listen to the doubt. All right, this is Psalms 77. Psalm 77, verse 7. Think about the way I was posturing myself. Think about the way I was saying things. And then look at some of these questions. And think about, this is the Bible. I think sometimes we think emotional responses to God are unholy. That we got to keep everything buttoned up. We got to think everything is prestigious. We got to think everything is okay. Life's okay. Life is not okay. It's never okay. It's hardly okay. Look at how these people who write these psalms, these are songs that the people of God would sing. Look at these questions. Feel the emotional weight of these questions. This is Psalm 77, verse 7. Will the Lord spurn me forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love forever ceased? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? Have you ever, maybe you've been Christian for a while, have you ever been taught to pray like that? To have doubt like that? To give that to God? Let me show you one more. This is in Psalms 13. Listen to this one. Psalms 13, verse 1. How long, O Lord, will you forget me? Forever. How long will you hide your face from me? This verse is so powerful. Look at this verse 2. How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Wow. Just think about your prayer life. Have you ever prayed like that? Are you afraid to pray like that? Are you afraid to ask those questions? Are you afraid to really give those emotions to God? Let me just tell you, God is omniscient. He knows everything. Which means if you have the thought in your head, you might as well verbalize it. If you've got it in there and you've had the moment where you're like, God, I just don't understand, you might as well tell it to him. You might as well give it to him. I mean, heck, these Psalms were sung by congregations. Not just one man. This isn't just a diary. Psalms are songs. They sung these doubts. Isn't it strange? Have you ever been taught to pray like that? I think it's important we give those doubts to God, but the question is, how does that work? What do we do with that? Right? What does that process look like? I'm going to take you to a book that is probably one of my most favorite books in the Bible. And it's a book that you probably have never read, even if you've been a Christian for a really long time. So what I ask you to do is to open up your Bible. There's some underneath the chair. What you're going to do is this. Go to the table of contents. Because I bet you can't find it. It's a book. It's not very long. It's only 3 chapters long. It's called Habakkuk. It's in the Old Testament. Habakkuk is sometimes how people pronounce it. But Habakkuk. And I just want to walk through this. The reason why Habakkuk is my favorite book is because I feel like he's the most real prophet. Like, I feel like I can hang out with this dude. Like, him and I could get coffee together, right? We could go surf together. We can play volleyball together. We can go skate together. I feel like this dude, right? I don't know how many times you read the Bible and you read it, you're like, I'm so far away from this hero. If Goliath comes for me, I better have a bazooka. Like, I'm not throwing stones at some giant 9-foot man. That's not going to happen. If I'm fighting Shaq, you better give me a gun. Right? I remember, you read the Bible and you get some of these heroes, you're like, there's no way I could be this guy. This is me. I feel like I could be this guy. I feel like I can be this guy. So I want to walk you through his story. So I'm just going to explain it. I'm going to read a lot. You're going to hear a lot. Just try to follow along with me. I encourage you, if you have your Bibles, to have it right in front of you. It's going to be on screen, but I encourage you to have it right in front of you. We're just going to walk through this. We're going to walk through Habakkuk's story. I'm going to read one small psalm after that, and then we're going to be done. But let's walk through his story. Let's walk through his doubt. This is what he says. This is Habakkuk chapter 1. Starting in verse 2. This is what Habakkuk says to God. This is his prayer. And it's actually, at the end of the book, it's a song too. So they probably sung this. Okay, so think about that. Let's see Habakkuk's doubt. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help? And you will not hear. Or cry to you, violence, and you will not save. Why do you make me see iniquity, and why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed. And justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. What's happening here? Habakkuk, as a man of God, as a prophet of God, a spokesman for God, God would give him words. He would speak it to his people. He is looking at his people as if I am looking at you. Right? I'm a prophet. You're God's nation. This is how God worked in the Old Testament. He had a people that he got out of slavery from Egypt. They're called the Jews. And he put them in a land, and he promised them these great promises. If they would obey, he'd give them prosperity. The end of the story is no, they don't obey, and they get kicked out of the land. And that's the point that they're at right now. Habakkuk is right there. He's looking at his people, and he's just saying, violence. Y'all are criminals. There are like 4 or 5 of you in this room that are good, but they're just surrounded by unrighteousness. It'd be like if the middle section right here is like, you guys are good. You're reading your Bibles. Man, you're in life group. You're loving things, but you're surrounded by these wicked people over here. And Habakkuk sees it, and his heart just cries out, and he's like, Lord, like violence. God, this person just got raped. God, this person just got mugged by your people. What are you doing? He says, God, your law is paralyzed. Right? His law, the 10 Commandments given to Moses. Don't steal. Don't commit adultery. Don't lust. Don't murder. All these codes to help us live brother to brother, sister to sister, right? Those codes, he's saying, they're paralyzed, man. Those stone tablets just sit in stone, but they never touch the heart of flesh. They never actually change anybody's behavior. And Habakkuk sees it, and like a madman, he says, what are you doing up there? Right? Aren't you the boss? Aren't you the king? What the heck is going on? Now, this is something different. I want to make sure this is very clear. You have to express your doubts to God, yes. You have to express those questions, yes. And sometimes those questions will get answers, sometimes they won't. Habakkuk, he gets answers. But I don't want you to feel like after this message, you feel like every question I ask to God, I will get an answer. We're going to talk about the end of the message, but I want to make sure that's very clear. But Habakkuk's privileged, right? So God calls out to him. And this is God's response. Remember, Habakkuk is complaining, your people are running amok. Things suck. There's just nobody does what you want, God. What's going on? And then God gives him an answer. And he does not like this answer. This is what he says. This is what God says in verse 5. God says, look among the nations and see. Wonder and be astonished, for I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe even if I told you. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation who march forth the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swift to devour. They all come for violence. All their faces forward. They gather captives like the sand. At kings they scoff, and at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, and they pile up earth, and then they take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on. Guilty men whose own might is their God. This is an awful answer. Habakkuk's sitting there, he's saying, dude, all these people, man, these ones are good. These ones aren't good. These ones aren't good. They just keep hurting them. They just keep taking advantage of them. God, what are you going to do? And God says, oh, I got you. I'm going to go get somebody to beat all these people up. But the people I'm getting are terrible people. They're awful people. Godless people. Worse than the people that they're attacking. So God is basically saying, here's my solution to your problem, Habakkuk. You have wickedness among the people. So I'm going to take even greater wickedness and destroy that wickedness. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, God, there's still a problem here. Right? Habakkuk in the very beginning says, violence. God, don't you see violence here? And then God says, hey, I'm going to bring a nation. And how does he describe them? They're men of violence. So God is like fighting fire with fire, fighting violence with violence, fighting wickedness with wickedness. So Habakkuk finds himself kind of in the same spot, like, God, I don't understand. God, what are you doing? This doesn't make sense to me. Watch, let me show you. Let me show you in his complaint. This is what he says, verse 12. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O rock, have established them for reproof. So at this point, he's kind of accepting the fate of his people. He's saying, okay, God, I kind of wanted you to change their hearts. I kind of wanted you to make them better people over here and over here, but you're just going to eliminate them. You're just going to judge them. You're just going to punish them. Okay, I'm okay with that. But you can't judge wickedness with more wickedness, punish wickedness with more wickedness, punish evil with more evil. This is what he says. This is where the doubts creep in. This is where the questions creep in. This is where his God, I don't understand moment creeps in. He says in verse 13, you who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong, why do you idly look at traitors and are silent when the wicked swallow up the men more righteous than he? You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. So God's saying, God, you made us. You created us. We're like fishes in the sea. And then he describes these invaders, these Babylonians, these cruel and violent men. It says he brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net, and he gathers them into his dragnet, and he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and makes offerings to his dragnet. For by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his nets and mercilessly killing nations forever? That's a good complaint. Right? That kind of makes sense. It would be like God taking care of the terrorist group ISIS, but taking care of them with Al-Qaeda. Right? That's what it's basically like. It's like God taking out a terrorist group with another more sinister, more evil terrorist group. God, haven't you just compounded the problem? Haven't you just made things worse? Isn't this the definition of irony? So this is what Habakkuk does. He says, all right, God, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. This is what he says in verse 2 of chapter 1. I will take my stand at the watchpost. I will station myself on a tower, and I will look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. And he gets another privilege. He gets another answer. And this is what God says. And the Lord answered him, write this vision and make it plain on the tablets, so he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by faith. I like this because I feel like God finally comes back at Habakkuk. God finally says, all right, that's enough questions. Remember who I am. Right? This happens with a guy named Job who asks a lot of questions, and God finally comes in at the end of the book and says, do you know who I am? Do you know that I spin quasars on my pinky? Do you know that I feed the beasts that are greater than you? Do you know who I am? Don't forget who I am. And God kind of comes in that way, and he says, look, Habakkuk, you need to know this. The righteous will live by faith, meaning what? You need to wait. You need to wait. God will say in the rest of chapter 2, and we're not going to read all that, the rest of chapter 2, God will say this, Habakkuk, I'm going to judge my wicked people with people more wicked, but a day will come when I judge those wicked people too. But you have to wait. You have to wait. And that's what faith means. Right? This passage right here, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, the righteous shall live by faith, is used by Paul, a writer in the New Testament, and is used in the book of Hebrews as well. This is one of those pivotal, concrete moments in theology right here. The righteous shall live by faith. But it's in a context of persecution. It's in a context of life sucks right now. And God says, wait. I'm coming. Yes, the bully is beating you up right now. And he is pummeling you, and he is on top of you. He is smashing your head against the concrete. And you think to yourself, I'm going to die. This is not going to work out. My enemy is over me. There's no way I will win. But your big brother is running down that alleyway, and he's saying, wait, I'm going to be there. Wait, I'm going to get there. And we have to have faith that he will come at the right moment. That's faith. That's faith. Faith that says wait. Faith that rests in God. Faith that not necessarily gets answers from God, but faith that says, I know he's coming. I know he'll judge. Watch, check this out. In chapter 3, things like totally switch up here. And this is probably one of the best parts of the book. Is at the very end of the book when he's praying, verse 16, he says this of chapter 3. And he's talking about the invaders coming in, right? The people, the wicked people coming in to punish the wicked people in his nation. He says, I hear and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters into my bones. My legs tremble beneath me. Dude, he can hear them. Right, put yourself in that situation. He says their horses are faster than leopards. I don't know if you've ever seen a horse run or watched a race or anything like that. But just 8 horses running around a track, you can hear it, you can feel it, the pounding of their hooves, these massive creatures. Imagine hundreds, thousands of them. The ground trembling underneath you. And you know what's coming. It's not a surprise to Habakkuk. He knows his people are about to be killed and enslaved. But this is his faith. He says, yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon the people who invade us. Wow. Habakkuk expresses his doubt to God. Gives it all to him. Says, God, I don't understand. God, I don't understand. God, I don't understand. And God graciously gives him answers. But are these comfortable answers? Are these easy answers? Are these answers that are easy to deal with? No, he says, dude, I'm shaking. I'm quivering. My bones have rottenness in them. I just sit there and I know the impending doom coming upon me. But yet I will wait. Yet I will wait. My favorite psalm, that was my favorite book. This is my favorite psalm. Psalm 131. It's 3 verses long. We're only going to read 2 of them. This is the psalm of doubting. Right? Look at this. Psalms 131. It says, O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. And I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. What does that language mean? He's basically saying, I'm not God. I don't know everything. God, I don't understand. I don't pretend to know what you're doing. I don't pretend to know what your plan is. I don't. He's saying, I'm not going to put myself up there. Deuteronomy 29:29 says, the secret things are God's. The revealed things are ours. Which means what? There are some times where you will not get answers. Trust me, I have asked God a ton of questions and never got answers for them. And may never get answers for them. And that's what this psalmist is admitting. God, I got questions. God, I got doubt. Just like Habakkuk, God, I got doubt. You express that. But you find yourself resting in God just like Habakkuk did. Even though the invaders were coming, he found rest. And this is what the psalmist says in verse 2. But I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. Now that verse may not make 0 sense to you. But let me tell you, as somebody who has fathered 2 children, what is a weaned child? A weaned child is a person, or is a baby, who's gone off mother's milk. Meaning no longer gets nourishment. And there's that transitional period where you're trying to get the baby off of dependency on mom's milk and taking solid food. That's a hard time. Right before that, the baby cries and whines and gets what it wants. But there's that transitional point where a weaned child doesn't get the milk it desires, but it still finds comfort in its mother's arms. It doesn't fight, doesn't throw a fit, doesn't do what it did as a small baby. This is exactly our posture right here. This is exactly Habakkuk's posture right here. The answer to your doubt, the answer to your God, I don't understand moment is not understanding, it's resting. The answer to doubt is not understanding, it's resting. It's not getting every answer to every question you've ever addressed to God. And you give him all those questions, give him all of that. Maybe he gives you the mercy like he did Habakkuk, but you probably won't like the answers. But you still have to quiet and calm your soul and say, God, I don't get it. God, I don't understand. God, I'm angry. God, I'm upset. Why do I have to watch that woman go off and have a procedure and go through a pain that I don't know and I will never know and I can never take away? God, I don't understand, but I rest in you. I rest that you're the God who knows what he's doing, that you're the God who loves me, that you're the God who has a plan, that you're the God who will care for me. Just like me coming as a weaned child, I don't get the milk that I want, but I still find solace in my mother's arms. So too is us as Christians. Do not run into tragedy, suffer doubt, and think it'll be calmed and quieted because you'll get all the answers. You won't. And don't come to me and ask me for all the answers. I can't give them to you. I haven't got them. So why would God give them to you? But we can still find rest. And why do we find rest? There's a part that we skipped in Habakkuk chapter 3. Habakkuk chapter 3, verses 3 through 15. And in that, Habakkuk remembers God. He remembers the God who delivered his people from the slavery of Egypt. This is hundreds of years before Habakkuk ever writes. He goes back and says, I can quiet my soul, calm my soul. Even though the invaders are coming in, I know you're a God. He remembers that God delivered him. You're a Christian. And you have more solid memory to hold and quiet your soul in. And you know what that memory is? It's not God delivered your people from slavery. It's that God delivered you from the punishment of death. It's that God delivered you from his wrath. It's God delivered you from the consequence of abandonment from him and hell forever. It's that God delivered you and gave you victory in Jesus Christ through his death and resurrection. You may be going through a very terrible time, but I'll tell you right now, it's not more terrible than the day of wrath that would be upon your soul at the day of judgment if you were outside of Jesus Christ. You may be going through a terrible and awful problem. You may be hurt, bruised, and totally, utterly scarred, but that problem is not as big as the problem that God solved in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You may have an enemy that you feel you can't get away from, and their scope is on you, and they are hitting you every time, and you just can't redeem your reputation, and you just can't advance, and they just keep coming at you, and this enemy is vicious. It's not more vicious than the enemy called death. So this is how you rest your soul. You sit down and you say, God, I don't understand. God, I don't get it. God, I don't get. Well, I'm sitting in this room with my door shut, with it barricaded so nobody can get in. All I hear is yelling and screaming from mom and dad. I hear violence. I hear awful words. It's you sitting in your room and you crying. You think, I drank too much. I had too much. I shouldn't have trusted that guy. And now he took from me something of my innocence. It's that moment when you're sitting in bed and you're saying, God, I wish you would have not have taken my father. I wish you wouldn't have allowed that awful choice to happen. God, I wish you would have prevented that overdose. God, I wish you would have freed my wife from the pain of a miscarriage. God, I wish you would have done that. Why? God, I don't understand. But I rest in you because you have conquered death on my behalf. You overcame my sin. You overcame my judgment. You overcame the wrath that was coming upon me. And if you can deliver me from that, you can deliver me from this. That's not answers, right? But that's resting. It's not understanding, but that's resting. Let's pray.